And so I'm signing not only a small gas tax increase, but I'm signing a bill that brings about a major highway construction program in the state of Oklahoma.
As the governor signed the tax into law, he said he was signing the most aggressive highway construction program in state history. The state now loses its claim that it was ranked number 49th in the country on the list of states with the lowest gas tax. It now moves to number 40. But studies have shown 2/3 of the state's bridges are unsafe, and the governor says federal dollars weren't enough to fix them.
It's our desire that in the immediate future you will see in the state of Oklahoma progress instead of our continued deterioration of the road program that we have. I've repeatedly said that the biggest complaint that I receive as governor are the terrible conditions of the roads.
The gas tax is effective immediately, but it's up to the retailer to decide when to put the tax in motion. Many service stations said they would probably put the tax on the pump about midnight. What it means is $40 million for the state, with a percentage going to counties and cities to begin major highway construction projects. What it means to the consumer, an extra 2.4% tax at the pump.
If they'll put the 2 cents on the roads and bridges, that's fine. But if they don't, I'd protest it.
And there's so many people that depends on their cars that can't afford all this tax they're putting on them to get around, like elderly people that just barely getting by on what they're making it.
There is no way to get around it. The gasoline at the pump will cost more. Bella Shaw, News 4.
The checkout counter at the supermarket is where Oklahomans will first feel the pinch of the so-called sin tax. Grocery store items like 3.2 beers, cigarettes, cigars, and pipe tobacco are now exempt from the state sales tax. Removing the tax exemption on beer alone would generate more than $3 million for the General Revenue Fund, and another $7 million would be earmarked for the Department of Human Services. The state estimates the cigarette tax would bring in close to $4 million for the General Revenue Fund and nearly $8 million for the DHS. The more than $4.5 million generated by the excise tax on hard liquor would be divvied up among the cities and towns and the General Revenue Fund. Kurt Autry, News 4.
Let's say hi, Mom. Excuse me. Go.
I realize the city revenues are down, and hopefully it's on an upswing. That's all we can hope for. 2 years is too far apart between recruit classes, so we definitely hope it gets better.
catch you right after it if you need to. Asked me the other day, they said if you could name 5 people out of Pleasant. Some people ask me, why can't we just have a free market for the farmers? Why does the government have to get involved? One of the problems is the governments of all these other nations in the world are getting involved. The Japanese put up barriers to our agricultural products. The common market pay their farmers export subsidies so that they can underprice our farmers. And that's another area we need to look at. We need to get into some really tough negotiations with these other governments to get them to open up the world market.
The danger.
Played for them. 40 years ago, they were the enemy. German POWs captured in Africa.
We hope that this is a pleasant experience for you because you have honored us by desiring to return to Oklahoma.
Ich möchte Sie herzlich willkommen heißen im Namen unserer Governors.
Their faces have aged, but their memories have not. They were anxious for the ceremonies to end so that they could once again see their former prison.
Und das ging jetzt mal der Weg in die Baracke rein, ne?
It was not as they had left it. Weeds and brush had replaced the crisp military barracks. Barracks that had been home for men like Fritz Klopp. Klopp was a member of an elite fighting force, one that hadn't tasted defeat until his unit was captured in Africa. Today, Klopp and the others searched for reminders.
Holz and cement.
But their memories had survived the decades better than the concrete and mortar. Many of their comrades had died through the years, a fact that didn't escape Klopp.
After 40 years, I'm lucky to be here. Again, 40 years.
Da war ich hier am Sportplatz, ich weiß ja nicht mehr wo.
Das ist auch noch eine Mauer, ne?
They still don't speak much English, but they were, for the most part, happy to return because they were the lucky ones. Many of their friends in the unit who weren't captured later perished in battle.
And the judges came around and talked to me, and the city attorneys came around to see me, and they said, we don't mind doing what the legislature wants us to do, but let us have...
Senator, what concerns me, arrest them and harass them if we give them the authority...
...against this bill when it came up. Senator Johnson...
If we want to go around cutting wages, let's cut them all alike, Senator Landis. There shouldn't be a privileged class in America. There shouldn't be a privileged class in Oklahoma. But there is. The working people have the privilege of paying the taxes, and now you want to cut their wages.
Asher residents usually don't pay much attention to their town's water tower. Now they can't stop thinking about it. Asher's 2 water wells are rapidly drying up. The National Guard has been trucking in 24,000 gallons of water each day. The makeshift arrangement only supplies 45 gallons for each citizen each day. While city officials try to figure out a long-term solution to the shortage, they're asking Asher residents to cut back on their water consumption. Grocers Ed and Vivian Glover say the hardship has bound the town closer together.
We hope that the obstacles that we are facing now will just help us draw the community closer together, and we'll all work together better to be better friends and to work for the good of each other and for our little community.
The tankers will continue supplying Asher's needs until the town's councilmen can decide what to do. City water officials figure they'll have to spend $30,000 to drill a new well. This old artesian water well could supply the answer to Asher's water woes. City officials want to run a survey here to find out who owns this old well and to determine if this well could supply the water needs for Asher's future. Scott Wallace, News 4 in Asher.
Now that here is where you test your...
Look good to me. And this valve is used to replace the human valve. When it's greater on one end, okay, we got the right aid back in.
I think that artificial heart right now is a short-term answer, an answer that will allow us to keep a patient going for a while until we can have the ultimate solution, which I think right now has to be heart transplantation.
That's all I need.
Saturday is usually wash day in Morris. Johnson's laundromat was open today, but it wasn't open for business.
They couldn't get to wash today.
Thursday night's tornado blew away Carrie Johnson's laundromat. The 80-year-old businesswoman rode out the twister in a closet. The laundry which she and her former husband had built wasn't so lucky.
Well, it's kind of heart-aching, but you've got to live over and put everything in the hand of the Lord and live over it, you know. You just can't worry about it, you know. You just have to do the best you can. Yeah.
Mrs. Johnson's nephews and nieces couldn't persuade her to leave her damaged dwelling. So they built their aunt a makeshift roof in case Mother Nature tried to play a second trick on her.
No, I sure do appreciate them very much. They're an awful nice boys, yeah.
Carrie Johnson says she will rebuild her laundry and her life. The reconstruction will take time. After Thursday night's killer storm, Mrs. Johnson is thankful she still has time.
After I fell and hurt myself, I can't get around too good. But I'll get it all right with the help of the Lord.
Scott Wallace, News 4 in Morris.
The tornado, described by some as being 100 yards wide, first hit south of Mannford on Highway 48. The roof and walls of a small grocery store were torn off, but most of the food was left untouched on the shelves. For the store's employees, the sight was terrifying. They looked out the front door to see the funnel cloud coming right at them.
It was already here at the road before we saw it. It was just dark and we kept watching, but I didn't even see that trailer over there go.
And it just came barreling through here.
I mean, it barreled through. It didn't last, I don't know, it seemed like hours, but I'm sure it wasn't but just a few minutes.
But in downtown Mannford, the scene was even worse. The remains of cars were scattered everywhere. The tornado tore through 4 churches, 2 schools, and more than a score of houses. All of the churches were in session when the funnel came ripping through. But quick thinking by several ministers kept dozens of Sunday school children from serious injury. There was one fatality. 70-year-old Lauren Athens was sitting in his pickup truck outside a church waiting for his wife. The twister threw the truck against an elementary school more than 100 yards away. And officials say it is a miracle more weren't killed.
By the time warning we had and the little help we had to do it, we should have had 30 or 40 killed and up in the hundreds injured.
25 to 35 people were reported to be injured, none critically. The downtown section of Mannford has been sealed off, and the National Guard and Red Cross are aiding in the cleanup. It has been a tragic week for those in Creek County. The people in Mannford felt lucky on Friday when they were spared the damage that hit Turleton, just 10 miles up the road. Today, that luck ran out.
The minute you approach the Pottawatomie County Health Department in Shawnee, signs tell you there's a problem. Officials are trying to battle a sudden outbreak of whooping cough. There have been 20 confirmed cases in Shawnee just since last Thursday. Whooping cough can be especially painful for preschool children. Officials also say children under 2 years of age are the hardest group to reach. That's why it's so important for parents to have youngsters immunized.
Clearly, being up to date on immunizations dramatically decreases the chance that a child will develop whooping cough or any of the other diseases that are immunizable. And also, even if that person does develop the disease, it's usually much milder. So that the vaccine is absolutely essential in preventing this disease.
Dr. Istri says it's a lot easier preventing an outbreak of whooping cough than controlling an epidemic. With 53 cases already reported statewide, officials are spending hours trying to reach people who may have come in contact with the virus carrier. Having the whooping cough record 2 years in a row is something state officials say they can do without. Ed Stewart, News 4 in Shawnee.
time as we may look at a general manufactured housing
association. We have in the audience a couple of committee of the council back in November. May has been the leader in developing.
You would have the biggest uprising in this city that has ever occurred on the part of the people who live north, east, south, and west in Oklahoma City. I think I can assure you that you won't get one vote on the city council to permit mobile homes in every zoning district in Oklahoma City. And I'll speak out very frankly myself. I certainly wouldn't support it.
Them into most, if not all, of the other questions that I missed in your...
If you want to review the promotion, did that. But yeah, obviously that's what we're doing. We're asking for this
back together, and I would see no reason why we couldn't break it for
We're very worried and concerned about it, and we certainly intend to make the public aware of the fact that we're lacking in these areas of manpower right now. And we certainly can't stand any more cut in manpower.
Some of the items are economic, and we were really only going to talk about non-economics today. So, you know, the economic things that would cost the city or cause the city to spend additional dollars or have additional paid lost time, and in this kind of an economy that we're experiencing now is real serious as far as we're concerned.
We appreciate the prompt action that the President made. In fact, it was one of the first actions he took as President upon his return from his visit to China. Everyone along the line has been most cooperative. What this means now is that in those 6 counties that the federal programs that are available to the citizens are now in place, and depending upon your qualification, the people will be able to apply and to receive aid.
We get them in both ways. We get them in brought in by the citizens. Either the citizens donate them to us, so-called donate them to us. They, for one reason or another, drop them off here and sign them over to us, or the citizen will bring in a stray. He doesn't have any identification on him. Or the animal control officers will bring them in through the back door, either as stray dogs that they've found or someone has given to them, or someone owns an animal and gives it over to them, and then they bring it in that way. It's Cocker right here, yeah. But it's Cocker mixed dog, the gold beige one right there. That dog's just been groomed, yet there's no identification on that dog. Isn't that incredible? Really crazy why somebody would feed a dog so well and take such good care of the dog, and then the dog would end up in the shelter without identification. Just doesn't make sense. We are in the kitten season, and we are bursting at the seams. We are getting them in boxes, baskets, and you name it. We're just getting them in. We could easily run out of room for all the kittens that we're getting now. We were putting them back. I had a special place to keep mother cats with kittens, but I'm afraid that we're going to run out of room because we're getting so many litters in. I wish, really, the public, we could somehow reach them and say, listen, you know, we don't want, I'd be the happiest man in the world if I could empty this place out, but I cannot do that. I wish there was a way that I could really stop this heartbreak of having all these animals coming in, and I know that we can't find homes for them. It's just impossible. And we euthanize way, way, way too much.
And he took his two fingers and put them in my nose, and he yanked up on my nose, and I guess that's when he broke it, you know. And
so obviously we probably won't cover in depth all of those because some come under our jurisdiction. But I heard about the incident, and since it does or appears to come under our jurisdiction under the civil rights laws, we have opened a case. We're going to be looking into it, and we will furnish a report to the Civil Rights Section of the Department of Justice in Washington.
Some people call Oklahoma the buckle of America's wheat belt. However, Oklahoma's grain growers say low grain prices in recent years have tarnished that buckle. Wheat growers lost an average of $15 an acre last year. Farmers blame their losses on a variety of factors: bad weather, low prices, and ineffective government management of agriculture. The government can't do much about the weather, but Congress is scheduled to consider a comprehensive farm bill next year.
That puts us plumb out of the market because we end up with our wheat in storage, and the rest of the world markets their wheat, and we continue to build our problem.
A congressional subcommittee on wheat, soybeans, and feed grains came to Oklahoma City to hear farmers' opinions about government agriculture policies. Most of the witnesses agreed that past programs have left farmers at the mercy of the law of supply and demand.
We're just producing so much in grain. We're producing more grain than we can use. Therefore, according to the supply-demand picture, the price just goes down to tell us that they don't need any more. And we get to the point where grain's almost impossible to sell, and certainly impossible to sell at a profit.
An export certificate that would be available.
Some of the farmers want more government farm regulation. Some want less. All of the witnesses want a government agriculture policy which will allow farmers to eat like the rest of us. Scott Wallace, News 4 at the State Department of Agriculture.
In 1983, 854 people lost their lives on Oklahoma roads and highways. At least 80 of those killed were between the ages of 17 and 21 years old. In the month of May alone, 15 names were added to the 17 to 21 category. However, in Oklahoma City, not one school-age fatality was recorded in either April or May last year. Last year was the first time the department took their case to the kids in an effort to curb teenage drinking and driving.
I know that many of you are going to be drinking alcohol during those times.
Today at Moore High School, officers from the Drug and Alcohol Education Unit talked to 2,000 seniors and juniors about prom and graduation night. The message was simple: if you drink and drive, you can get hurt, so watch your step.
It's the emotion that gets behind the wheel with you, the aspect of having a good time at a party or a gathering, or the depression or anger that gets behind the wheel. increases the speed and people die.
After the speech, a film was shown to the students, a film depicting a typical prom night but ending in death because of drunk driving. For the most part, the students took note.
After the film, you know, everybody just kind of shut up, and you could, you know, tell that they were really thinking.
I've always been kind of afraid of, you know, drinking and driving. Just, you know, kind of scares you out of it seeing the film we saw.
Only the Putnam City School District has more teenage driving deaths than the Moore High School. School officials here hope today's presentation will help reduce those numbers. Kevin Ogle, News 4, Moore.
Few people will say that prisons are the most critical issue facing Oklahoma, but many state leaders say prisons will be the most visible issue this summer. They are afraid that overcrowding and summer heat could lead to rioting. The House and Senate are near agreement on a plan to put inmates into community treatment 6 months prior to their release. That would free up precious bed space and help inmates adapt to society before they are turned loose. But Governor Nigh says he has already signed one inmate release law this session, and he wants to see how it works before he signs another one. Nigh met with House and Senate leaders for several hours this afternoon to iron out differences on prisons and several other issues.